Sure.
Good afternoon, everybody. I know everyone's excited that we only have 22 days of school left, so very good. Now that you got the hooping and hollering out of the way, I want to remind you of proper concert etiquette. So, proper concert etiquette is not hooping and hollering right now. Morgan Wallen or Taylor Swift or something maybe, but not here. This is not the same venue. So, we're going to need your attention. We're going to need you to stay silent and quiet. Listen with your ears, keep your mouths closed. And Ms. McKee is going to give you a little more information about our program today. But remember what I said, proper concert etiquette. You clap when it's the time to clap, but you don't scream and hoop and holler, okay? Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon.
I know it's Miss McKee, but that was hooping and hollering. If you have a problem with your mouths being closed during this, we'll remove you, okay?
Thank you, that's beautiful. As Mr. Dixon said, sitting before you on the stage are the 7th and 8th grade orchestra students here at Walhalla Middle School. You'll recognize them along with two guests. We've been very fortunate this week through the support of the South Carolina Artist in Residence program, as well as support here at Walhalla Middle for our fine arts program, to host Mr. Andy Brooks, our fiddler from Tomasi, South Carolina, and Mr. John Fowler from Spartanburg, South Carolina. These two gentlemen are some of the best and the brightest in traditional fiddle and folk music in the upstate and in the whole country, to be honest. They are a wealth of information, and we have been busy playing for 2 days. I've lost count of how many fiddle tunes we've learned. So this is an opportunity for them to share the work they've been doing, along with some other songs and treats from our performers. I'm going to go ahead and let them tell you a little bit more about themselves and their experience, but I thank you so much for your silence during the performance and your clapping at appropriate times. Thank you so much. All right, Mr. Brooks.
How is everybody? Good? Thank you. My name's Andy Brooks. I grew up around Pickens, Easley area, right between the two. Learned to play fiddle from my great uncle. Started out and went from there with a bunch of people. Been playing longer than I care to admit. I'm really dedicated to old time music. There was probably about 10 years. That's all I listened to, really. But I love it, and I love working with these kids. And I'm going to tell you right now, and I say this sincerely, I've taught a lot of young people to play fiddle. When I came into this group, I think we had talked about learning 5 tunes. They learned 14? So this is an amazing group of fiddlers here. And I really have enjoyed working with them. And thank you all for having me. And my friend John over here, also want to thank Miss McKee for inviting me to come in here and do this. But my friend John, he came 2 hours to play for you folks, and to work with these guys. So please give John a hand. But as Ms. McKee said, John's a Folk Heritage Award winner. Runs a radio station called This Old Porch on Sundays. He's an author, written children's books. I run out of things that you've done, John. You've so many awards, but I'm going to turn it over to him, let him tell you about himself. Thank you.
I think you're going to have a really good time listening to these tunes. Let me tell you how to listen to them as well. Absorb the tunes. They're old-timey tunes. Some of the tunes go back a couple hundred years. And what you're hearing today is a piece of Americana history. I think you'll enjoy these tunes if you sort of kind of sit back. Don't clap during the tunes or anything. Clap after we get through, because they need to hear us up here as well. It's an honor to be up here with these young folks. I wish I could go back and do it again. I think I would be in the strings class. Miss McKee is fabulous working with these children. I've been observing her, and I tell you what, they're very lucky to have somebody like that. It's an honor to be here, so I'm ready to get started. You ready to get started?
Yes, sir. Our first tune is called Boil Them Cabbage Down. Now, these guys out of 14 fiddle tunes, which is not easy in 2 days. It's amazing to me, but they picked 5 they wanted to play for you. The first one's Boil Them Cabbage Down. It's an old, what we call a minstrel era tune, when musicians would have traveled through this area, because people in these areas didn't travel outside very much. So the musicians came to them, and this tune likely originated probably in the mid-1800s. So Boil Them Cabbage Down. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, the next tune is an old dance tune. It's kind of a 2-part fiddle tune. You play each part twice, but some of you may have been up to the park, to the dances up there. I bet it's been played there many times. It's called Lost Indian. 1, 2, 3, 4.
We're going to play another dance tune. If you take you back about 100 years, you went back 100 years, you might hear this tune. It would have been called maybe Fly Around or My Pretty Little Miss or Fly Around My Pretty Little Miss or Susanna Gal. Any one of those tunes would have done. If you called that one out, folks knew exactly what you're going to play. This was a very popular tune 100 years ago. And think about this here just for a second. Think about if you went back 100 years ago, these tunes would have been called old-timey tunes just as they're called today. Here's Fly Around, My Pretty Little Miss.
The next tune is called Old Yeller Dog Come A-Trottin' Through the Meeting House. And this tune goes back to the Civil War time when they used to say most Democrats or most Southerners would rather vote for a yeller dog than a Republican. And that was because Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, and we had troubles after the Civil War. But this is what this song is about. Refers to the politics of the South at the time. Old Yeller Dog. 1, 2, 3, 4. The last tune we have for you is John Henry. Has anybody ever heard of that tune? It's a very famous old American folk song. You want to talk more about it, John? Sorry to...
This is one of our tunes that worked on. It's really not an old-timey tune. It's only about 100 years old, a little bit older. And the way it got to be was back about the 1880s or so. There was they used to build a good bit of trains were built at that period, during that period. A lot of train tracks all over the upstate, well up into North Carolina, parts of Virginia, West Virginia, and including all across the United States. And to build those trains or those tracks, lay those tracks, you needed men working. You had thousands and thousands of folks out there, folks from all over different parts of the country, different ethnic groups, race groups, and all sorts of kind of things. And in West Virginia, there was a group that was, they were in charge of digging right through a mountain instead of going over it or around it. What they had to do is they had to dig a tunnel through the mountain. And the way they would dig those tunnels was just back in the 1880s, you had shovels and picks and all sorts of kind of things. People did it by hand in those days. And some of the folks had to actually chop or drill or blow big holes in the rock so they could get through the mountain. We talk about granite. Granite's one of the hardest rocks out there. And the way, or what you would do, is you would have one man holding a bit, a long bit, sometimes it's about 4 or 5 feet long, and he'd stick it on the rock, and the bit was like a drill bit. And each time another fellow would hit the drill bit, he would drive it into the rock just a little bit. And your job, if you were holding the bit, was to turn it just a bit about the time the hammer hit the top. You had to be right on time. I'd hate to be the man holding that bit. I'll tell you what, in case you missed. At any rate, a fellow by the name of John Henry, some folks says that through history he was an ex-slave who got a little bit of trouble and he got arrested and was put in a chain gang type situation. So he was working in the tunnels. And his job was to have to take that 9-pound hammer and hit that bit while somebody else held it. He was so good, everybody started talking about him. He was so fabulous, everybody started making up stories about him. And story got out that, he could outwork 2 or 3 men, in the tunnels. So they decided to challenge him. About that time, there was a steam driller that came around. It did the work. All you had to do was start it up, and it ran by coal, and it would drive the bit into the rock. The only problem was it would slow down. It wasn't quite as hard, but it would work all day long. So John Henry and the machine had a big old race, and folklore tells us that he beat the machine, but he walked out of the tunnel and he laid down his hammer and he died. And folks started talking about that, telling stories about it, and somebody wrote a poem, somebody wrote a song, and in a very short time, the song got to be very popular, and we still sing that song today, and it's called John Henry.
Here's John Henry. Thanks, John. All right. 1, 2, 3.
We certainly had a great time. I tell you what, Andy and I are going to sit down and play one good fast tune for you and show you how it really sounds when you really practice and practice and practice. That's what it's all about. And I think we're going to do this tune called Sally Ann. Thank y'all.
One more time before we get started, please give a big round of applause to Ms. McKee and these wonderful fiddlers up here.
Andy's asked me to tell you a little bit about the banjo. Banjo has a great history to it. It's part of Americana. It dates all the way back to, gosh, about 350 years or so. Back when the first banjos started showing up, they came from Africa by way of Barbados and such. They probably didn't look a whole lot like this, and nobody really called them banjos, and they would go through an evolutionary process and change. But the first white musicians probably started playing the banjo around 1820s, 1830s. That meant for about 100, 150 years, the only ones that played the banjo were the enslaved Africans at the time on plantations scattered. No one paid too very much attention to it. Nobody, of course, didn't take any pictures. The first picture painting of anybody playing a banjo was in the late 1700s. Thereabout. And there was this fellow by the name of Thomas Jefferson. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not. He mentioned that his enslaved Africans, his slaves were playing an unusual instrument they called the banjo. He mentioned that in the late 1700s as well. And then, of course, the type of banjo I'm going to be playing is not the bluegrass banjo. I'm going to be playing something called the old-time or clawhammer banjo, and it is interrelated to the way the banjo might have been played about a couple hundred years ago. And the name of the tune is called Sally Ann. let's go ahead and give this this group a big old round of applause. Big round of applause. Mr. King, big round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you guys for your attention during the show. I should kind of add an explanation. You know, normally the orchestra looks a little different. We're sitting down on stage, we're sitting in a semicircle, and I've got a stick, not a bow. You know, things look different. And that is in the European tradition. So what you learn in your music classes here is kind of the European tradition, meaning the way that folks were learning in Europe before they came over to the New World, still doing it kind of the same way, right? What you see today is what happened when these instruments were put in a new environment. There was no history in America, so folks brought their instruments with them and created a new history, a new culture, and I think that's pretty cool. So it looks a little different, but hopefully the sound is familiar to you or you've heard this before. So thank you again to our guest artists, Mr. Andy Brooks and Mr. John Fowler. It's been a great 3 days with you guys, and we appreciate all of your knowledge.
Okay, we're going to talk about a couple of things while we got all of you here, so we can finish out the year strong with some things. But we want to talk about a couple of things.